Everyone was shocked when this man's true feelings were revealed. My beloved soul, listen closely, because this is not an ordinary story, and it is not a message that arrived by accident. There is a reason your eyes found these words today. There is a reason your heart felt pulled toward this message. The truth that is about to unfold is something that remained hidden for a very long time. People saw one version of this man. They believed they understood him. They thought they knew what he wanted, what he felt, and what was inside his heart. They watched him smile when he was supposed to smile. They watched him stay silent when he was supposed to stay silent. They watched him walk through life carrying responsibilities, obligations, and expectations. Yet none of them truly knew the secret he had been carrying. None of them knew that behind every quiet moment, behind every glance that seemed meaningless, behind every decision that appeared ordinary, there was a feeling growing stronger and stronger each day. My beloved soul, the truth is that some feelings become so powerful they can no longer remain hidden. Some emotions become so intense that eventually they find a way to reveal themselves, no matter how hard someone tries to keep them locked away. This man spent a long time convincing himself that he could control what was happening inside him. He told himself that nobody needed to know. He told himself that it was safer to stay quiet. He told himself that revealing the truth would only create complications, questions, and emotions he was not ready to face. But the deeper truth is that the heart has its own plans. The heart does not always listen to logic. The heart does not always obey fear. The heart continues to beat for what it wants, even when the mind tries to silence it. Listen closely, because this is where everything began to change. Day after day he carried these feelings alone. He watched from a distance. He thought about conversations that never happened. He imagined moments that never took place. He replayed memories over and over again inside his mind. There were nights when everyone around him believed he was fine, yet he found himself staring into the darkness thinking about the same person again. There were mornings when he woke up pretending nothing had changed, even though his heart was already searching for signs, reminders, and traces of someone he could not stop thinking about. My beloved soul, people around him started noticing small things before they ever learned the truth. They noticed how his expression changed whenever a certain name was mentioned. They noticed how he suddenly became quiet during conversations. They noticed how his eyes seemed distant, as though part of him was somewhere else. But nobody understood why. Nobody connected the pieces. Nobody realized that a storm of emotion was growing beneath the surface. The truth is that he became afraid of his own feelings because they were stronger than anything he had expected. He never planned for this. He never expected one person to have such an impact on his heart. He never imagined that a single connection could completely transform the way he looked at the future. Yet that is exactly what happened. And as the days passed, his feelings only grew deeper. He started noticing things he never noticed before. Songs reminded him of that person. Random places brought memories flooding back into his mind. Even ordinary moments seemed connected somehow. It felt as though the universe itself was constantly placing reminders in front of him. The deeper truth is that he could run from many things, but he could not run from what he felt. Listen closely because the moment of revelation was approaching faster than anyone realized. Every secret reaches a point where it becomes impossible to carry alone. Every hidden emotion eventually demands to be acknowledged. And this man's heart had reached that point. The pressure became too much. The silence became too heavy. The longing became too powerful. One evening, during what seemed like an ordinary conversation, something unexpected happened. The walls he had built around his emotions began to crack. The mask he had worn for so long started to fall away. The carefully controlled image he had maintained could no longer contain the truth. At first it was only a few words. Then a few more. Then suddenly years of hidden emotion began pouring out. My beloved soul, nobody in that room expected what happened next. Nobody expected the honesty. Nobody expected the vulnerability. Nobody expected him to reveal feelings that had been buried so deeply for so long. The room became silent. People stared in disbelief. Some thought they had misunderstood him. Others wondered whether they were dreaming. Because the man they believed they knew was suddenly showing a side of himself nobody had ever seen before. The truth is that he spoke from his heart without holding anything back. He admitted how often he thought about that person. He admitted how much they had changed him. He admitted how many times he had wanted to speak but remained silent. He admitted that fear had controlled him for far too long. And when those words finally left his mouth, something extraordinary happened. Instead of feeling weaker, he felt stronger. Instead of feeling ashamed, he felt relieved. Instead of feeling trapped, he felt free. The deeper truth is that honesty has a power that fear can never match. For years he believed silence was protecting him. But silence was only imprisoning him. The moment he revealed the truth, he stepped into a completely different reality. Listen closely because the reactions around him were unforgettable. Some people were shocked because they had never imagined his feelings ran that deep. Others were emotional because they realized how much pain he had been carrying alone. Some even felt guilty because they had misunderstood him for so long. The truth that emerged changed everything. Suddenly old conversations made sense. Suddenly strange behaviors became understandable. Suddenly moments that once seemed meaningless revealed their hidden significance. My beloved soul, this is where the story becomes even more powerful. The revelation did not just change how others saw him. It changed how he saw himself. For the first time in a long time, he stopped fighting his own heart. For the first time, he allowed himself to accept what he truly felt. For the first time, he stopped pretending. And that decision transformed him in ways nobody expected. His confidence grew. His energy changed. The weight he had carried for so long finally began to disappear. The truth is that authenticity creates a kind of freedom that cannot be found anywhere else. When someone stops hiding who they are, they become stronger than they ever imagined possible. People around him noticed the difference immediately. The man who once seemed distant now appeared alive. The man who once seemed uncertain now appeared focused. The man who once hid behind silence now spoke with clarity. And all of it began with one simple decision: the decision to reveal the truth. Let me take you deeper because there is an important lesson hidden inside this story. Many people spend years hiding what matters most to them. Many people convince themselves that silence is safer than honesty. Many people believe they can outrun their emotions. But the deeper truth is that the heart always knows. The heart always remembers. The heart always finds a way to reveal what truly matters. This man's story became unforgettable not because he was perfect, but because he finally became real. He stopped living according to fear and started living according to truth. That is why people were shocked. That is why they could not stop talking about what happened. And that is why his revelation left such a powerful impact on everyone who witnessed it. My beloved soul, if this message found you today, perhaps there is a reason. Perhaps there is a truth within your own heart waiting to be acknowledged. Perhaps there is something you have been carrying silently for far too long. The truth is that hidden feelings do not disappear. They wait. They grow. They become stronger. And eventually they ask to be seen. This man learned that lesson in a way nobody expected. His true feelings shocked everyone when they were finally revealed, but the greatest surprise of all was not how others reacted. The greatest surprise was discovering how much peace existed on the other side of honesty. And as people continued talking about what had happened, one realization became impossible to ignore. The moment he finally revealed his true feelings was not the end of his story. It was only the beginning of something much bigger, something nobody saw coming, something that would soon change not only his life but the life of the person who had unknowingly held his heart all along. My beloved soul, listen closely because what happened after that revelation was even more unbelievable than the confession itself. Everyone thought the story was over. They believed the truth had finally come out and there was nothing left to discover. But the deeper truth is that revealing a hidden feeling is only the first chapter. What comes afterward is where real transformation begins. The moment this man stopped hiding his heart, the energy around him started changing in ways nobody could explain. People who had known him for years noticed something different in his eyes. The sadness that had quietly followed him seemed to be fading. The uncertainty that once controlled his decisions began disappearing. It was as if he had finally put down a burden he had carried for far too long. Yet while everyone around him was focused on his confession, there was one person whose reaction mattered more than anyone else's. The person who had unknowingly become the center of his thoughts. The person whose presence had silently shaped so many of his days and nights. My beloved soul, what nobody knew was that this person had been carrying their own unanswered questions. For a long time they sensed there was something unspoken between them. They noticed moments that felt different. They noticed glances that lasted a little longer than usual. They noticed the strange connection that seemed impossible to explain. Yet they never had proof. They never knew whether what they felt was real or imagined. The truth is that when someone hides their feelings for too long, confusion often takes the place of clarity. And that confusion had affected both of them. There were moments when they almost spoke. Moments when they almost revealed what was inside their hearts. Moments when destiny seemed ready to bring everything into the light. Yet fear always found a way to interrupt. Fear whispered that it was safer to stay silent. Fear convinced them that honesty would create problems instead of solutions. Fear built invisible walls between two people who were already connected in ways neither fully understood. Listen closely because something extraordinary was beginning to unfold behind the scenes. After the revelation, conversations started happening that nobody expected. Friends began sharing things they had witnessed but never mentioned before. Family members recalled strange moments that suddenly made sense. Small details from the past began fitting together like pieces of a puzzle. The deeper truth is that people often notice far more than they admit. They see patterns. They observe emotions. They recognize connections. Sometimes they simply wait for the right moment before speaking about what they have seen. And now that moment had arrived. Stories emerged from every direction. Someone remembered how his face would light up whenever a certain topic came up. Someone else remembered how he would suddenly become distracted whenever that person entered a room. Another recalled conversations where he spoke about the future in a way that hinted at feelings he never openly admitted. My beloved soul, the more people talked, the clearer the truth became. This was never a temporary emotion. This was never a passing attraction. This was something that had quietly grown over time, becoming stronger with every experience, every memory, and every silent moment. Yet the most powerful realization came from the man himself. For years he believed he was protecting his heart by staying silent. For years he convinced himself that hiding his emotions would prevent pain. But now he was beginning to understand something important. Silence had not protected him at all. It had only delayed the life he truly wanted to live. The truth is that fear often disguises itself as safety. It tells people they are making wise decisions when in reality they are simply avoiding uncertainty. This man finally saw that clearly. He realized that the greatest risk was never honesty. The greatest risk was spending years wondering what might have happened if he had spoken sooner. Let me take you deeper because what happened next surprised everyone. Instead of feeling rejected, isolated, or misunderstood, he found himself surrounded by unexpected support. People respected his courage. People admired his honesty. People recognized the strength it took to reveal feelings that had remained hidden for so long. The reaction he feared most never arrived. Instead, doors began opening where he expected walls. Opportunities appeared where he expected obstacles. Understanding appeared where he expected judgment. My beloved soul, this is one of life's deepest lessons. The stories fear creates inside the mind are often far worse than reality itself. Fear imagines disasters that never happen. Fear predicts rejection that never arrives. Fear creates barriers that exist nowhere except within our thoughts. And as this man moved forward, he started realizing how many years he had surrendered to those imaginary barriers. Listen closely because destiny was not finished with him yet. There was still a conversation waiting to happen. A conversation that would test everything he had learned. A conversation that would require even more courage than the confession itself. Because revealing your feelings to the world is one thing. Revealing them directly to the person who inspired them is something entirely different. Days passed. Then more days. During that time he reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about the journey that brought him to this moment. He thought about the opportunities he almost missed because of fear. Most importantly, he thought about the person who had unknowingly become such an important part of his life. Every reflection led him to the same conclusion. He could no longer live with half-truths. He could no longer settle for uncertainty. Whatever happened next, he wanted it to be real. The deeper truth is that authenticity changes people. Once someone experiences the freedom of honesty, returning to silence becomes impossible. The old version of himself would have hesitated. The old version would have searched for excuses. The old version would have waited for the perfect moment. But now he understood something powerful. Perfect moments rarely arrive on their own. They are created through action. They are created when someone chooses courage over comfort. My beloved soul, when the day finally came, his heart raced faster than it had in years. Every emotion he thought he had mastered suddenly returned. Hope mixed with uncertainty. Excitement mixed with fear. Yet beneath all those emotions was a calm certainty he had never felt before. No matter what happened, he was ready to face the truth. Because truth, even when difficult, is always lighter than a lifetime of wondering. As he moved closer to that conversation, memories flooded his mind. Every smile. Every shared moment. Every unfinished sentence. Every silent feeling. It all returned at once. Yet instead of overwhelming him, those memories reminded him why he could not walk away. They reminded him why honesty mattered. They reminded him why some connections refuse to be forgotten. Listen closely because this is where everything reached a turning point. The moment finally arrived. The distance between uncertainty and truth became smaller than ever before. There were no crowds watching. No dramatic speeches. No grand performance. Just two people standing at the edge of a moment capable of changing everything. The truth is that life's most important moments often appear ordinary from the outside. Yet within them exist possibilities powerful enough to transform entire futures. My beloved soul, as he looked into their eyes, something unexpected happened. The fear that had haunted him for so long began fading away. In its place came clarity. In its place came peace. In its place came the realization that honesty was not something to fear. Honesty was the bridge that allowed two hearts to finally understand each other. And as he prepared to speak the words he had carried for so long, he sensed that destiny itself had been guiding him toward this moment all along. What happened next would leave even more people speechless than the original revelation. Because the response he was about to receive would uncover a truth hidden on the other side of the story, a truth nobody saw coming, a truth that would prove his feelings had never been traveling alone, and the moment those words were finally spoken, everything changed forever. My beloved soul, listen closely because the moment he finally spoke those words, time itself seemed to slow down. The noise of the world faded into the background. Every fear he had carried, every doubt that had followed him through countless nights, every question that had haunted his mind suddenly led to this single moment. For so long he imagined what this conversation would feel like. He imagined every possible outcome. He imagined rejection. He imagined silence. He imagined confusion. Yet nothing could have prepared him for what actually happened. The truth is that reality often surprises us in ways fear never predicts. As the words left his mouth, he felt exposed, vulnerable, and completely honest for the first time in years. There was nowhere left to hide. No mask left to wear. No excuse left to create. His heart stood fully revealed. And for a brief moment, everything became still. My beloved soul, that silence felt longer than it really was. In those few seconds he wondered whether he had made a mistake. He wondered whether he had waited too long. He wondered whether destiny had brought him all this way only to leave him disappointed. But the deeper truth is that some silences are not empty. Some silences are filled with emotion too powerful for immediate words. And this was one of those moments. The person standing before him looked at him with an expression he had never seen before. There was surprise there. There was emotion there. There was understanding there. Yet there was something else as well. Something that immediately caught his attention. Relief. It was as if a burden had also been lifted from their heart. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment without even realizing it themselves. Listen closely because what happened next changed everything. Instead of turning away, instead of creating distance, instead of responding with uncertainty, they shared a truth of their own. A truth that had remained hidden for far longer than anyone imagined. A truth that nobody saw coming. My beloved soul, they admitted that they too had felt something unusual for a very long time. They admitted that certain moments never left their memory. They admitted that they often found themselves wondering about him when there was no reason to. They admitted that there were days when they tried to ignore what they felt, only to discover that those feelings refused to disappear. The deeper truth is that two hearts can sometimes travel parallel paths without realizing it. Both feel something. Both wonder. Both hesitate. Both wait. Yet neither speaks because each fears what the other might say. And that fear creates years of unnecessary distance. The moment their truth emerged, everything began making sense. The strange coincidences. The unspoken understanding. The unexpected emotional pull. The feeling that something important existed beneath the surface. Suddenly it all became clear. My beloved soul, the energy between them shifted completely. What had once been uncertainty became clarity. What had once been confusion became understanding. What had once been fear became possibility. And for the first time, neither of them felt the need to hide. They spoke openly. They shared memories they had never mentioned before. They laughed about moments that seemed insignificant at the time but now carried new meaning. They discovered that many of the experiences they thought were personal had actually been shared from opposite sides. The truth is that destiny often leaves clues long before people recognize them. Small moments. Meaningful encounters. Unexplained emotions. Tiny signs that only make sense once the bigger picture is revealed. Let me take you deeper because the story did not stop there. News of what happened spread quickly among the people who knew them. The same individuals who were shocked by his original confession were now even more astonished by what followed. Nobody expected such a powerful response. Nobody expected the hidden connection to be so real. Friends who once doubted began believing. Family members who once questioned began understanding. The truth that emerged was impossible to ignore. This was not a fantasy. This was not wishful thinking. This was two people finally acknowledging what had been growing beneath the surface for a very long time. My beloved soul, something remarkable happens when people stop running from their truth. Life begins moving forward again. Energy that was trapped in fear becomes available for growth. Possibilities that once seemed distant suddenly become real. And that is exactly what happened here. Both of them felt a sense of freedom they had not experienced in years. It was not because every problem disappeared overnight. It was not because life suddenly became perfect. It was because they no longer carried the exhausting weight of pretending. The deeper truth is that authenticity creates peace. Not because it guarantees a specific outcome, but because it removes the endless struggle between what we feel and what we show the world. Listen closely because there was another lesson hidden inside this journey. For years he believed he needed certainty before taking action. He believed he needed guarantees before revealing his heart. He believed he needed to know the ending before beginning the story. Yet life does not work that way. Courage comes first. Clarity comes later. The path appears after the first step is taken. And now he could see that clearly. If he had continued waiting, nothing would have changed. The connection would have remained hidden. The questions would have remained unanswered. The possibilities would have remained unexplored. Everything transformed because he finally chose honesty over fear. My beloved soul, as weeks passed, their connection continued growing stronger. Conversations became deeper. Understanding became stronger. Trust became more natural. They learned things about each other that had remained hidden for years. They discovered dreams they shared. They discovered values that aligned. They discovered that many of the qualities they admired in each other had been present all along. The truth is that genuine connections often become stronger when they are finally allowed to breathe. What fear once suffocated, honesty allows to grow. Yet even as their story moved forward, both remained aware of one important fact. None of this would have happened without the revelation that shocked everyone in the beginning. The moment he exposed his true feelings became the turning point that changed everything. It was the doorway through which an entirely new chapter entered their lives. My beloved soul, think about how many people spend years standing at the edge of a similar doorway. They wait for certainty. They wait for perfect timing. They wait for a sign so obvious that no risk remains. Yet the deeper truth is that some doors only open when courage turns the handle. Some opportunities only appear when fear is challenged. Some destinies only unfold when someone decides they can no longer live behind silence. This man's journey became unforgettable because he reached that decision. He chose truth. He chose vulnerability. He chose authenticity. And because of that choice, he discovered something more valuable than he ever imagined. He discovered that the connection he feared losing was actually waiting to be understood. Listen closely because there is one final truth hidden within this story. The greatest shock was never that his feelings were revealed. The greatest shock was realizing how much life had been waiting on the other side of that revelation. For years he thought honesty would cost him something. Instead, honesty gave him something. It gave him clarity. It gave him freedom. It gave him the chance to build something real. And as he looked back on everything that had happened, one realization became impossible to ignore. Every moment of fear, every sleepless night, every unanswered question, every silent hope had led directly to this new beginning. Yet deep inside, both of them sensed that an even bigger chapter was approaching. Because what had started as a shocking revelation was slowly becoming something far more powerful, and neither of them realized that a conversation waiting just ahead would uncover a secret about their past connection so surprising, so emotional, and so impossible to explain that once it came into the light, everyone who heard it would be left speechless all over again. My beloved soul, listen closely because the chapter that unfolded next was unlike anything either of them expected. They believed the hardest part was over. They believed the truth had been revealed, the feelings had been spoken, and the future could finally begin. But the deeper truth is that when two people stop hiding from what they feel, life often begins revealing things that were hidden long before either of them understood their significance. As their conversations became more frequent and more honest, they started sharing memories from years earlier. At first these memories seemed ordinary. Small moments. Brief encounters. Passing conversations. Yet the more they talked, the more they realized something impossible to ignore. Their lives had crossed paths far more often than either of them remembered. There were moments when they had been in the same place at the same time without realizing it. There were events where they had stood only a short distance apart. There were days when one was thinking about the other without knowing the other was experiencing something strangely similar. My beloved soul, the truth is that some connections leave traces long before they fully arrive. Destiny has a way of weaving invisible threads through ordinary moments. Most people never notice those threads until they look back years later and suddenly see the pattern. That is exactly what was happening now. The deeper they explored their shared history, the more astonishing the pattern became. One memory led to another. One story unlocked another story. One forgotten moment suddenly connected to something neither of them had understood at the time. Listen closely because what they discovered left them completely speechless. There was a particular day from years ago that both of them remembered clearly. At the time it seemed insignificant. It was just another day among thousands. Yet when they described their experiences, they realized something extraordinary. Both of them had experienced a powerful emotional shift on that exact day. Both had made decisions that unknowingly changed the direction of their lives. Both had felt a strange sense that something important was approaching even though they could not explain why. My beloved soul, neither could fully understand how such a coincidence was possible. Yet the deeper truth is that some events are not coincidences at all. Some moments act like invisible turning points. We only recognize their importance after enough time has passed. As they continued talking, they found more examples. More connections. More moments that seemed impossible to explain. The more they uncovered, the more they realized that their story had been unfolding long before either of them consciously recognized it. There was a quiet sense of wonder in every conversation now. A feeling that life had been guiding them through unseen pathways for years. The truth is that when people look only at the present, they often miss how many events had to align to bring them where they are today. Every choice, every delay, every unexpected encounter, every disappointment, every lesson. Each one becomes part of a larger design. My beloved soul, for the first time, both of them began viewing their past differently. Moments they once considered mistakes suddenly appeared necessary. Delays they once hated suddenly made sense. Even painful experiences seemed to carry hidden lessons that prepared them for what was happening now. The deeper truth is that growth often disguises itself as difficulty. What feels like a setback in one season may become a blessing in another. And now they were beginning to see how every challenge had shaped them into the people they needed to become. Listen closely because there was another revelation waiting for them. As they opened their hearts further, they started discussing fears they had never shared with anyone else. Not surface-level fears. Not ordinary worries. The deep fears that people carry silently. The fears they hide behind smiles and routines. To their amazement, many of those fears were almost identical. Both had struggled with trust. Both had experienced disappointment. Both had spent periods of their lives feeling misunderstood. Both had built emotional walls for protection. My beloved soul, this realization affected them more than they expected. It was not simply about similarities. It was about understanding. True understanding. The kind that makes a person feel seen without needing to explain every detail. The kind that creates comfort where loneliness once existed. The truth is that genuine connection is not built on perfection. It is built on recognition. It is built on the feeling that someone understands pieces of your story that you thought nobody else could understand. And that feeling was becoming stronger with every passing day. The people around them noticed it too. Friends observed changes in their energy. Family members noticed new confidence in their voices. Conversations that once felt heavy now felt lighter. The man who once carried hidden emotions now carried visible hope. The person who once lived with unanswered questions now carried growing certainty. My beloved soul, it was as though two separate journeys were slowly becoming one shared path. Yet destiny still had another surprise waiting. One evening, during a conversation about the past, they uncovered a detail neither had ever mentioned before. It seemed small at first. Almost insignificant. But the moment they connected the pieces, both fell silent. Years earlier, during one of the most difficult periods of his life, he had made a private promise to himself. A promise nobody knew about. A promise connected to the kind of future he hoped to create one day. As he described that promise, the other person stared at him in disbelief. Because during that exact same period, without knowing him, they had made a remarkably similar promise. The words were different. The circumstances were different. Yet the meaning was almost identical. My beloved soul, moments like that are difficult to explain through logic alone. They create a sense of wonder that reaches beyond ordinary understanding. They remind people that life is often more interconnected than it appears. The deeper truth is that some souls move toward each other long before they meet in the ways that matter most. Long before conversations begin. Long before feelings are revealed. Long before the future becomes visible. Listen closely because this realization changed something important within both of them. It removed the last traces of doubt. Not because it answered every question, but because it showed them how much of their journey already pointed in the same direction. Fear began losing its influence completely. Trust began growing stronger. Hope began feeling natural instead of fragile. And with that change came a powerful sense of momentum. They no longer felt like two people wondering whether they should move forward. They felt like two people already moving forward together. My beloved soul, the truth is that life rarely provides absolute certainty. Yet sometimes it provides enough evidence to encourage faith. Enough understanding to inspire courage. Enough connection to justify taking the next step. That is exactly where they found themselves now. Looking ahead instead of looking back. Building instead of wondering. Living instead of hesitating. The deeper truth is that every great transformation begins with a single decision. His transformation began the moment he revealed what was hidden in his heart. That decision created a chain reaction. One truth led to another. One conversation led to another. One revelation opened the door to many more. And now, standing at the edge of an entirely new future, both of them understood something that once seemed impossible to believe. The revelation that shocked everyone was never meant to be the final destination. It was only the beginning of a much larger story. A story still unfolding. A story still revealing new layers. A story that continued proving, again and again, that some of the most powerful moments in life begin with a truth that someone was once too afraid to say out loud. And as another unexpected discovery started coming into view, both of them sensed that the next chapter would reveal something even deeper about why their paths kept crossing, why their hearts kept recognizing each other, and why a connection that once seemed impossible to explain was about to become impossible to deny. My beloved soul, listen closely because this is where the story reaches its most powerful and emotional chapter. After everything they had discovered, after every hidden feeling had been revealed, after every fear had been faced and every unanswered question had finally begun receiving answers, there was still one final realization waiting for them. It was not hidden in a dramatic event. It was not hidden in a shocking confession. It was hidden in something much simpler and far more powerful. It was hidden in the way they had changed each other. One evening, as they reflected on everything that had happened, they began talking about who they used to be before this journey started. They spoke about the fears they once carried, the doubts that once controlled their decisions, the loneliness they once felt, and the dreams they almost abandoned. And as they shared those memories, something became clear. Neither of them was the same person anymore. My beloved soul, the deeper truth is that the most meaningful connections do not simply enter our lives to make us feel something. They enter our lives to transform us. Before this journey, he spent years hiding parts of himself from the world. He convinced himself that silence was strength. He believed vulnerability was weakness. He feared being fully seen. Yet now he stood stronger than ever before, not because he had hidden his truth, but because he had finally revealed it. And the person standing beside him had experienced a similar transformation. They too had learned to trust again. They too had learned to open their heart again. They too had discovered courage they never knew they possessed. The truth is that real connection does not only bring two people together. It helps them become the versions of themselves they were always meant to be. Listen closely because this realization changed everything. Suddenly the story was no longer about hidden feelings. It was no longer about fear. It was no longer about uncertainty. It became a story about growth. A story about healing. A story about two people who unknowingly helped each other become stronger long before either understood what was happening. My beloved soul, as they looked back on their journey, they realized that every challenge had served a purpose. Every delay had taught them patience. Every disappointment had taught them wisdom. Every moment of loneliness had prepared them to appreciate the connection they now shared. Even the painful chapters carried hidden gifts. The deeper truth is that life often prepares people separately before bringing them together. The lessons that once felt unfair suddenly revealed their purpose. The struggles that once felt meaningless suddenly became valuable. And for the first time, they understood why their paths unfolded exactly the way they did. There was no bitterness left. There was no regret left. There was only gratitude. Gratitude for every lesson. Gratitude for every challenge. Gratitude for every moment that led them here. My beloved soul, the people around them continued talking about the revelation that shocked everyone. Some still could not believe how long those feelings remained hidden. Others were amazed by the courage it took to finally speak the truth. But those closest to the story understood something deeper. They understood that the greatest miracle was not the confession itself. The greatest miracle was what happened afterward. The healing. The growth. The transformation. The freedom. Because when truth finally entered the light, it changed more than a relationship. It changed lives. Listen closely because there is one final lesson hidden within this journey. So many people spend years waiting for certainty before they take action. They wait for guarantees. They wait for perfect timing. They wait for fear to disappear completely. Yet the truth is that courage does not arrive after fear leaves. Courage arrives when someone chooses to move forward despite fear. This man never became fearless. He simply decided that his truth was more important than his fear. And that single decision altered the course of everything that followed. My beloved soul, if there is one thing this story proves, it is that honesty has the power to change destinies. A hidden feeling remained hidden for years. A truth remained trapped behind silence. A future remained out of reach because fear stood in the way. Yet the moment truth stepped forward, possibilities began unfolding that nobody imagined. The deeper truth is that some of life's greatest blessings wait on the other side of a conversation we are afraid to have. Some of life's most meaningful chapters begin with a truth we are afraid to speak. And some of life's most beautiful transformations begin the moment we stop hiding who we really are. As they stood together looking toward the future, neither knew exactly what the coming years would bring. Life would still have challenges. There would still be obstacles to overcome. There would still be lessons to learn. But something fundamental had changed. They would no longer face those challenges alone. They would no longer live trapped inside uncertainty. They would no longer allow fear to make their decisions. My beloved soul, that is why everyone was shocked when this man's true feelings were revealed. Not because the feelings themselves were extraordinary, but because the truth behind them was so much bigger than anyone realized. Hidden inside those feelings was a journey of courage. Hidden inside those feelings was a lesson about authenticity. Hidden inside those feelings was the beginning of a completely new life. And in the end, the revelation that stunned everyone became the very thing that set two hearts free, proving that sometimes the truth we fear revealing the most becomes the truth that changes everything for the better. And as their story moved forward into a future filled with hope, understanding, and possibility, one thing became impossible to deny: the moment he finally revealed his true feelings was not the moment his life changed, it was the moment his real life finally began. The end.